Thank you so much for joining the Dr. Whisperer podcast show. I am your host, Sharon Feckety, and you are here to listen to others talk about the business of medicine. Don't forget to subscribe, share it with somebody else that is in the business of medicine so we can all learn together. Thank you for being here and enjoy the show. We're going to have some fun today on the show, like it or not. Boop, boop. Maybe that should be my new song.
I was going to say, that's a great intro.
Do you like that? You know, because Dax Shepard has this really great music on his podcast. And he also does this sponsor ad where he's like, we are supported by, you know, I can't do that. I need my own thing, but I really I think I want a jingle. Ed, welcome to the show, Ed Bryan.
Thank you. Perfect.
Yeah. This isn't your average show, man. This is a real talk about business in medicine. And when you are having real talk about business in medicine, you fortunately or unfortunately, doctors that might be listening and all my surgeon friends, you have to have somebody smart in your corner that's going to deal with your money. Otherwise, I can't get you a loan. I'm not going to be able to attract investors. All the things. Okay. So Ed, I'm going to be the one that says all the things that you want to say, but you are in a very professional business, Ed Bryan. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sharon. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here. I think this is going to be a great podcast.
well, let's hope they think so.
Right.
Ed is from Idaho. Let's start there, everybody. Are you from Idaho or did you move to Idaho?
From Idaho. So yeah, it's, you don't meet very many people from Idaho sometimes, but yeah, it's potatoes for sure. But Boise's nice. Boise's growing. It's one of the top places to move. So we're seeing an influx of people out, from California, the coast, the West Coast. And so, yeah, it's growing. There's about 500,000 people here. So
yeah, well, that's, I told you before we hit record that my girlfriend, that's a lawyer, was just there. And she did tell me too about, you could see all of the cranes everywhere, which is good, right? We want some more people to move there instead of here in Florida. So do me a favor, everybody, actually, Florida's horrible. So don't move here. We don't need you here. I'm from New York. I moved here 18 years ago when nobody was here. And now you're all here and you're doing 90. And 18 years later, I don't do 90 on the road anymore. I do 35 miles an hour. So, Ed, we are going to talk about the business of medicine. And one of the things I want to set you up with here is, being a director of operations in New York for many years and working with neurosurgeons and orthopedics and all of them.
Sure.
And then moving here and running pediatrics, there has been one theme. And that theme is that my physicians are brilliant. I mean, I've never met smarter people. I tell them if I was as smart as you, I'd have that shit tattooed right across my forehead. I am a doctor. Better yet, I am a surgeon. Just throw that stuff right here. I'd have it tattooed down my arms. I would just tell everybody. But what I don't like to tell people is how many mistakes they make in terms of their finances and not getting the appropriate advice about where they can make money when they're doing their taxes during this time where they have the most stress. We're coming up to April 15th here, Ed, and the doctors are like, oh my God, what are we going to do? So Ed, I would like for you to enlighten them and share with them about what you do in your company and how you can help my physicians and all the physicians that might be listening or the administrators understand how to actually make some money.
Sure.
Keep some money.
Well, yeah, let's dive in. Well, and I'm gonna give you a disclaimer. I'm not a CPA, but I think we've got until April 18th. So we have a couple extra days this year. So,
but Ed, before you even say that, and that's something very important that you have said, sure. I will tell you this. Majority of my physicians that I have worked with for 25 years think that their CPA is the same thing as a financial advisor, as a bookkeeper. No. They just charge more. So let's be real.
Yeah.
Ed is not a CPA. So I'm grateful for that.
No, and you
Love
know,
you, CPAs.
yeah, we love them, right?
Yeah,
The
we need
interesting
them.
thing about CPAs is in society, right, in the business world, we've kind of propped them up, to your point, as a catch-all.
Hmm.
We think that they always have our best interest at heart and they're experts in everything.
Yes.
The reality of it is they're more tax code enforcers than they are
They're
anything.
going to file your taxes.
Right,
That's
right.
it.
There's very little tax planning. Every now and
Yes.
again, if you get a good CPA, then hold on to them, because a lot of CPAs are more just tax preparers, right?
Right.
They're not going to lose sleep if you write a big tax check. They just won't, right? And they don't know a lot about insurance. They don't understand the risks that you take to run your business. And we love CPAs. They're one of our biggest referral sources, but at the same time, there's a very high barrier to entry for them, or an educational level for them to learn about things that don't fit inside their little box.
But a great CPA will refer you to Ed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's how we do it. And
Good.
so let's talk about it. So what we do, we work with high net worth business owners. A lot, as we were talking before we started the recording, a lot of our clients are in the medical field, surgeons, you name it, right? Orthopedic surgeons, cardiologists, brain surgeons, all those types. We work across the board, right? We even have family medicine offices that have multiple offices. And what we do is we help you set aside, as a business owner, tax advantage dollars. So we help you lower your tax liability and put money into a vehicle that's tax advantage to self-insure for risks that fall outside of your traditional property and casualty insurance. We fill holes in the gaps in your traditional insurances. As doctors, every doctor that's listening here knows, my traditional insurance will only go so far. My malpractice only goes so far. It's a joke, but it's true. It's sad, but true. Insurance policies are getting thicker and thicker. They're adding more and more pages to your insurance policy every year. It's not because they're adding more coverage. They're adding more exclusions, exemptions. They're making it more difficult to file claims. So your traditional insurance carrier, they're a for-profit entity, right? They want to charge as much as they can and have as few claims as possible. And if you really lean on that insurance too much, they'll non-renew you.
Right.
So out of necessity, business owners, especially in the medical field, are self-insuring whether they know it or not, right? Now, what we're saying is you can self-insure with pre-tax dollars. And that's what we do for business owners and medical professionals. Set aside that money, get the deduction for the risks you're already taking, hope you don't have to use it, and then you have a bucket of pre-tax money to invest. And then down the road, it gives you other options. It becomes a long-term planning tool. And that's really what we do in the medical, with any business owner, but especially in the medical space.
Right. So I'm going to just share a quick little story, Ed.
Sure.
So people can understand this and how serious this is, even though I like to make a jokey. When I first moved here from New York, I was director of operations for New York Medical. And then there were no privately held places like the one that I was in. We had 42 satellite offices and 11 offices of our own. Okay. We were big.
Right.
And we had a CEO, and we had an attorney, we had a compliance officer, we had all the things that made us successful. I moved here and I ran a pediatric practice for 8 years. And so when it came time for me to meet the people, the players, as I like to call them, I was brought to a restaurant with the CPA who ordered a scotch at lunch. I know. It is funny, Ed. This is funny.
I mean, that's great.
It is. It's great. And it is more of the norm than you would think.
Right.
And I thought, well, this is strange. We're drinking at lunch and we're talking about money.
Great combination.
It's perfect. It's a perfect shit show. So, it was fast and furious before I started taking a look at all of the vendors, right? And really just cleaning house. And that's what I did. I took all of it away, because what I realized, and what is so true for all of the physicians, all of the surgeons that I have had the pleasure of working with for so many years, is that you're great at medicine. But I promise you this, if you do not bring on a company like Ed's company, which all of his information is going to be in the show notes, we're going to pimp the hell out of him, you will go bankrupt. Like, it is that important. So the CPA, as you mentioned, Ed, we love. The financial advisor, we love. But really, this information about taxes, I don't know. So I was the administrator. I was the director of operations, and I would bring in the team and I would say, do me a favor, doc, ask all the questions that you have now, because as soon as they walk out the door, I know nothing. So it's not my expertise. So tell me what it's been like, please, Ed, if you will, because I want them to identify this. What has been the roadblock in getting you to come in and helping the practice? Let's start with the roadblock.
Yeah, well, you're going to laugh, and it's going to feel like we're beating up CPAs today, unfortunately, during tax season.
Love you, CPAs.
Yeah, it's been the CPA, right? Yeah. The CPA that thinks they know everything, that thinks they've heard of everything. That, as I mentioned earlier, they don't lose sleep when the doctor writes a big tax check at the end of the year.
Yeah. And
so because of that, a lot of times it's just an ignorance or a lack of awareness for the types of programs that are out there. If they would sit down and say, okay, let's listen, right? And then I'll poke holes in it after they leave. You know, I think more often than not, the doctors, they look at this, and we always say, if you give us a half an hour to talk through what this might mean for your business or how this can benefit you from a risk financing perspective and then a tax perspective, very rarely, if you're in the target demo, does a doctor walk away and say, that's not for me. A lot of times it becomes more of we need to get the timing right. Mm-hmm. And to give you an idea, just to kind of give you an idea of the types of risks that doctors, they take, and there's really no insurance for. You remember the ice storms in Texas a couple years ago in the spring, right? That shut Texas down, right? And you might even got some of them in Florida.
Because I listened to Brene Brown. I wouldn't have known otherwise, but I listened to her podcast.
So we had a client down there that had multiple offices. And guess what? It got shut down for 10 days. Yeah. Couldn't get patients in. Mm-hmm. Well, that's just revenue out the door. But if you have a third-party business interruption policy with us, you set aside tax advantage dollars for, then you can pull that revenue back in and say, okay, here's my 10 days or 2 weeks of lost revenue year over year. Well, let's pull that back in instead of just eating that and saying, well, we're going to eat that. We'll pull that in. And the goal of an 831B plan of what we do is really to, when revenues are high, we pull a little bit off the top, right? And we set it aside and say, okay, this isn't going to be taxed. And then if revenues dip or we have a catastrophic event that impacts the business that falls outside of traditional insurance, let's pull some in. And so your cash flow remains level, right? Instead of these high ebbs and flows, these ups and downs, the cyclical nature of business, we can flatten those out. And then that makes the business more predictable. To your point, it makes it more attractive. It's easier to get a loan. It's easier to get an investor because they can see that, hey, they're doing things to mitigate risk. They're taking steps to financially protect themselves. And that's really what an 831B plan does, especially in the medical space.
So, Ed, how much nepotism do you run into when you're working with physician offices?
A pretty decent amount.
Look at that smile. That's a recognizable smile.
Yeah, I was going to say, you wouldn't have asked that unless you already knew the answer. I had a suspicion.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's a big one. And Ed, I want to say this because I do feel like, well, I know because I've been in the inside. I've been in the inside and not just jail, everybody. I've been on the inside. I know every time I would say anything to do with finances, anything to do with the CPA, anytime that meeting was happening, they were like, oh God, Sharon, it's going to be horrible. Anytime somebody wanted to come in and give them better information about the 401k that we were giving 11% to the employees to. And I was one of them. So I was like, cha-ching. It was the reason I was able to open my business. I'm like, if you don't want to listen to me, cool.
Right.
I can leave you. I'm going to open my own business with all that money that's in this plan that I've only been with you for 10 minutes. Holy crap. So I know, Ed, I have a deep passion for it. And I know that the problem is, just like you said, CPAs, it's not all the CPAs. There's a lot of people, unfortunately, inside of the medical industry that are very protective, and they're mostly protective because they don't understand.
Right.
So when people don't understand something like finances, like hire, whatever it is, they'll get defensive and they'll just stick with what they know. That CPA, that is the neighbor of the orthopedic surgeon around the corner in Idaho.
Yeah. Well, and have you seen, I'm going to ask you a question here. How many times have you seen doctor gets out of medical school, they start their practice, or they're junior partner, they get into a practice and they become a partner, and then they become majority partner and managing partner, and the practice grows and it has multiple offices, and they're still using the same CPA that they started with right when they got out of medical school. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that CPA, maybe now all of a sudden you're their biggest client, that doctor is, and he has not grown at the same rate. And so he doesn't have the capacity, or she doesn't have the capacity to bring those next level solutions to that doctor. We see
Why are you
that
trying to
all the
make me
time.
cry on the show, Ed?
I'm not. It's sad
Painful.
but true. It is.
Yeah.
It is. Or it's a college friend. They went to college together. They got their undergraduates together. One became a CPA. One became a doctor. Well, hey, I went to school with this person. They're going to be my CPA. It doesn't matter how good they are. And so that's what we talk about is a lot of times there are these next level solutions. These are enterprise level solutions. Big business, big medicine has been using this for a long time. The hospital industries, those networks, they're using these types of tools as well to hedge their risk and defer profits on good years. What we're saying is now small to mid-sized business owners, high net worth doctors, practice owners, et cetera, they can do the same thing and mitigate those risks and enjoy those same benefits. But you have to be around people or be open to listening to those new ideas.
Right. So, and we started out like this even before I hit record, I say a lot of inappropriate things. I am very honest. I have to be, because it's the only way to get them to listen. I don't have anything to lose. I always tell my docs, hey, listen, I don't really give a shit either. You hire me, or you don't hire me. It doesn't matter. I'm in business and I can help you, and you're in medicine and you can save my life. So you have to be willing to trust. It's always about that. And listen, I have empathy. I have seen it, not in the practices that I've run, but in, clients that I've worked with, that people steal from them.
Sure.
Or they've had a relative that has been running their finances for a long time that they didn't realize were hiding this and doing that and covering their tracks. And it ultimately affects them. It makes them sick and makes them not want to do this. And then they go back to doing something maybe they didn't want to do. So, MD usually stands for money dumb. I've heard that before, Ed. Have you heard that?
I've heard it. As you know, I've got some friends in the medical. So I work with a lot of doctors, but I also have personal friends that are doctors. And it's interesting. The clients, obviously, it's a client relationship, right? So they're very professional and professional with them. But my friends that are doctors, they'll let you in on that secret that, hey, I can reconstruct a face, or I can perform heart surgery, but I don't know anything about money. All I know is that I pay a lot of taxes, and I don't know how to manage my money. And so that's the interesting thing is, so I have a friend that went to medical school in Texas, and he said, the thing that they didn't do, now this was 20 years ago, he goes, there wasn't a single class about practice management or finances. Right. He goes, I can do any, I can reconstruct a face, a neck, an ear, whatever the case may be, but I can't tell you what to do with money. I know I make a lot of money,
right?
But I don't know, and I know I drive a nice car and I have a nice home and all of those things, but beyond that, I wouldn't be able to tell you what to do with money. Yeah. So it's one of those things. And to your point, I think that there are a lot of people that are protective of the doctors, but at the same time, there's almost I'm going to fake it till I make it, right? Mm-hmm. I'm just going to bluff my way through this and hope nothing bad happens. And that's the thing, that's where we talk about education, right? We're educators more than anything. Hey, listen, this idea might not be for you. Like you said, it's not for every doctor, but for the ones that can see it for what it is. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, here's another tool that I'm aware of. If it doesn't work for you, great. It might work for a friend, right? It might work for someone else that you know. I will tell you, the common refrain from a lot of our doctor clients is, where were you 10 years ago? If I would have known about this 10 years ago, where could I have been?
I get the same response. Where were you 25 years ago?
Right.
Where were you? Yeah, well, we were here. And we were working with people that could afford to pay us because they didn't go bankrupt. So, sorry. Not sorry. But really, and I will say this, I joke a lot and I make a lot of fun, but the truth is I love work. I love doctors. I love them. And I'm so proud of some of the things that they have done and how much courage it does take to admit that you don't understand something, especially when you are at such a high level. Like it does, it brings tears to my eyes. Like I can see it in a nanosecond. I know when you're being defensive, it just means you don't understand. I already know that. It's been a very long time me doing this. But really and truly, like, they need people like you to help them. And I'm always trying to get, so you're right. Education is the greatest thing because nobody wants to be sold to in any business.
Right.
but educating them takes away some of that fear. So, yeah, that's what needs to be done. Ed, what can we do? How can we help them?
Absolutely. So what I would say is, as a business owner, as a practice owner, as a medical professional, ask yourself how did you weather the last 3 years, right? Since 2020, regardless of what type of medicine you were in or whether you were deemed essential or non-essential, right? We had doctor clients that were deemed non-essential, right?
Look at all my dentists, Ed. My
Yes.
God, the
I was gonna say, we
saddest
had
thing
dentists
ever.
all over,
Yeah,
right?
it was,
Hey, all of a sudden I got shut down for 3 months.
yeah, it was horrible to
Right,
watch.
it was. I can tell you, we have more than a handful of doctors who will tell you the only reason they're still in business after 2020 is because they had an 831B plan and they had a rainy day fund. They had tax advantage dollars set aside for the unforeseen. And so as soon as when COVID happened and they said, hey, guess what? You're non-essential. We're shutting you down. Guess what? They were able to file a business interruption claim, not against their traditional insurance, because guess what? Traditional insurance said, hey, business interruption means a fire or a flood or an earthquake. It doesn't mean a virus. There's an exemption on page 57 of your policy for viruses. So you can't even file against your traditional.
Right.
And that's still being fought out in courts. That's going to be decided in court down the road. And the attorneys are going to be the winners on that,
Right.
not the policyholders. But what they were able to do is pull money back into their business, make their payroll. And this was before the PPP program. And that's the other thing. We talk about, how many people had to take or took PPP because they needed it, right? To pay their employees, pay their rent, service their debt, make their loan payment. Mm-hmm. Well, I would argue we already have a PPP type of program out there. It's been on the books since 1986. It's called 831B, right? Which says you can set aside tax deferred dollars for these types of unforeseen events. If you want to be a self-sufficient business owner and be able to set that money aside for a rainy day, you owe it to yourself to learn about 831B. Our website, it's 831b.com. Obviously my contact info I think is going to be here in the show, but reach out. We offer a free, basically it's a complimentary consultation. It's 30 minutes. You can ask all the questions you want. We're going to tell you how it works, and then you go from there. It's education. Our process, I hate to say sales cycle because it isn't. Really what it is we'll make you aware of it. We'll answer all your questions, and then it's up to you, right? Is it a fit? If it is, let's take the next step and talk about it. It's education. It's one of those things. I was joking with somebody the other day. I talked to somebody in 2017, and at the time it didn't fit. Their business wasn't in the right place. They called me a week and a half ago and said, hey, I'm ready to move forward. Right? So we're not high pressure. It's more of we want to make you aware of this tool. It might benefit you. It might be the right thing for you. And if you can see it for what it is and you're in that right frame of clientele, then, let's do it. And if, hey, this might work for me 5 years from now, right? Now, and let's stay in touch. Because to your point, we truly believe the small to mid-sized business owners, especially doctors, right? They're risk takers every day. In the litigious society that we live in, for doctors to go out and do what they do every day, knowing they have that risk, that to me, that's courageous. And you're a risk taker. But be smart about it. Set that money aside on those good years. So if something happens, if you get shut down or you get sued for something that you did that your malpractice won't cover, right? Or somebody puts you on blast on social media, even though you didn't do anything wrong and you have to hire a marketing company or a PR firm. We've got policies for those types of things. You could pull that money back into your business instead of, to your point, dipping into lines of credit or hamstringing the cash flow of the practice to where, ultimately bankruptcy happens. This is a way to hedge against that.
I want to cry.
No, it's true though, right? I know. And I talk a lot about, you have to have a prescription for business if you want to be successful in a private practice. Yes. And I really do think that ultimately a physician, to feel any kind of freedom, almost has to be in a private practice. And you can grow and you can do incredible things. But you absolutely need to have a company like yours as a partner, because listen, I pay an accountant, a bookkeeping company, I have all of the things, and I have all of the things today because I have watched all of the mistakes made by physicians. And I don't want that, but I can't teach it. I don't, I stick to what I'm good at. And it's sad because I know that they have trust issues. And I know that my dog is shaken because he's like, enough already, Sharon.
But really and truly, it is so sad how many I see that end up in that position where they don't have to be if they just had better people guiding them in business. And that takes, you have to be willing to let your ego down, because on the other side, I get to hear from the banks and everybody else in business, like, oh my God, Sharon, I don't know how you work with doctors. Docs, I hear it all the time. I'm like, yeah, I have the patience of a saint. I'm going to be canonized. There's no question about it. I don't have to do any good deeds. I've worked in this business of medicine for over 20 years. I'm set. I'm going straight up, no purgatory.
I love it, Sharon. Well, let me tell you a story to that point, right? So I met with a trauma surgeon 4 or 5 years ago, in a fairly large city here on the West Coast. And he was almost in tears because he couldn't afford to pay his taxes. And at the same time, he showed me, all the brand new cars, the kids in private school, I just bought a bunch of real estate, and was like, what's wrong? Something's wrong here. Right. And it was like, well, what are you doing? Well, nothing. And it was like, okay, let's, we had been brought in by a CPA that said, hey, talk to him. Right. We sat down and we walked through this, and he was like, wait, you can do that?
Yeah.
And it was almost like the light bulb went on, to your point. And that's the thing, right? He was literally almost in tears saying, what's wrong? I make all this money and I literally can't pay my taxes. I can barely afford to keep my kids in school. And it's like, that's because you're not aware, you're not educating yourself. And there are tools out there that if you get smart, then they'll completely change the way that you manage your money and your financial future. And that's why 831B to us is just one tool in the toolkit for the doctor. And like you said, we want to become a trusted advisor. Trust is hard to come by in the medical field, but it's one of the things, if we can get there, if you can let us in and listen to, and see how this can change your practice, the peace of mind that it'll give you, the ability to sleep easy at night is pretty comforting.
Yeah. Well, listen, we want happy doctors, because happy doctors keep patients alive.
Yes.
Really, like, we need happy doctors. We don't need the stress and the depression and the anxiety that comes with, because I have watched it, I have witnessed it, I have been a part of it, and it's heartbreaking, it's sad. And I know that there are solutions out there. So I hope now, all of us crawling out of this panorama, that we realize that life is precious. And if we're going to work, let's work smarter, so we can provide for our family, so we can put the kids in the private school. And if you got to buy another Porsche, Doc, okay, but
there's a more efficient way to do it, right?
Yes.
Let's do it this way.
Right, exactly. And well, I appreciate it. I would love to have you back when I am less annoyed about them. Because once I see the bio, I'll be honest with my audience and very transparent, as I always am. I'm like, oh, here we go. We're going to talk about risk alternatives. And I know that at the crux of all of these businesses, it's a lot of financial, disparity and a lack of education. And I just really want to reinforce to everybody, if you are in the business of medicine, you need partners like Ed, and you need to understand how you can create a legacy. Let's create a legacy, right? Let's create a legacy, and let's stay in business and prosper and grow and be happy. So Ed, thank you for all that you do. We love you, CPAs.
We do.
We'd love you. We'd love you just like, I'm not good at financials. Don't bring me on, for that. If you want to help grow your business, I'm your girl, but don't bring me on for anything else. I'm going to refer the experts. So thank you so much for being here, Ed. I appreciate you.
Yeah, it's been great, Sharon. I love it. Like I said, feel free to reach out. Anybody that's listening, we'd love to educate you. Like I said, we're educators first and foremost, and we want happy doctors. I'm with you.
Happy doctors. Bye.